I want you to just picture the last article you read about artificial intelligence.
Oh, boy.
Right. And I don't mean the heavy technical documentation or those super niche developer blogs. I mean the mainstream stuff. The headlines that pop up on your news feed while you're, you know, just trying to drink your morning coffee.
Yeah, I can already guess the tone of those. It's usually pretty breathless.
Breathless is a very polite way to put it. I'd say it's panic. It is almost always just sheer panic.
Yeah.
You see things like the end of coding or the death of the writer, why accountants are doomed. There is this overwhelming, frankly suffocating narrative right now that we are effectively building our own replacements.
Exactly.
And a subtext that, well, sometimes not even subtext, they just say it,
Yeah.
is that you, the human, the listener, you are becoming obsolete.
It's the replacement panic. And honestly, we really shouldn't dismiss it as just cheap clickbait.
No, it feels very real to people.
It's not an irrational fear at all. When you see a piece of software easily pass the bar exam, or, write a sonnet that actually scans perfectly, or generate a photorealistic image of a person who doesn't even exist, the logical leap is, well, what exactly do you need me for?
Right.
Ideally, the utopian story goes that we'll all be lounging on pristine beaches while robots do the dishes. But the actual underlying anxiety is that we'll just be unemployed while the robots do the accounting and the legal work.
Exactly. And that right there is why today is going to be, well, let's call it a data-driven therapy session.
I like that.
We're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating and, frankly, a very dense academic and economic analysis. It's by Jonathan H. Westover, Ph.D. And the title is a bit of a mouthful.
They usually are.
It's called AI as Augmentation, How Human Capital Shapes Technology's Impact on Productivity and Inequality.
Like I said, it's a catchy title if you're an economist, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But the thesis inside this paper is explosive. It basically looks directly at that replacement panic we were just talking about and says you're looking at the wrong map entirely.
Right.
Westover argues, and he brings an absolute mountain of empirical data to back this up, that we aren't looking at a replacement event right now. We are looking at an augmentation event.
Yes. And that distinction, it really isn't just semantics. It is literally the difference between being fired and being promoted.
Wow.
The data strongly suggests that AI is functioning less like a replacement worker sitting at your desk and much more like what Steve Jobs used to famously call a bicycle for the mind.
I have always liked that phrase, the bicycle for the mind, but I want to push back on it just a little bit before we buy into it completely for this context.
Go for it.
Because a bicycle still requires me to physically pedal.
Right.
If the bike is suddenly an electric motorbike doing 99% of the physical work, am I really pedaling anymore? Or am I just a passenger gripping the handlebars and hoping I don't crash?
That is the perfect question to start us off. And that is exactly what we are going to unpack today in this deep dive.
Oh.
Because the pedaling, the human effort part of the equation, it doesn't go away, but it changes completely.
It transforms.
Exactly. We're going to look at productivity stats today that are frankly startling. We're talking 50% jumps in efficiency in some cases.
Which is unheard of.
Totally unheard of. But we're also going to look at the dark side of this transition. We're going to talk about which specific skills become major bottlenecks and why being just average at your job is about to become a very, very dangerous place to be.
Okay, so the mission for this deep dive is to move past the hype and the doom scrolling. We are going straight into the hard numbers.
Let's see that.
Productivity stats, wage inequality theories, and really specific case studies of how major companies are actually using this tech on the ground. And I want to give the listener a key takeaway preview right up front. The future isn't about AI doing the work for you. It's about how your human capital, your specific set of skills, determines whether this technology creates a bottleneck or a massive boom for you personally.
I think that's a very fair summary. Ultimately, it is entirely about agency.
Okay, let's get into the meat of this. Let's start with segment one,
Yeah.
the augmentation landscape. We really need to start by clearly defining our terms because people throw around the words automation and AI like they mean the exact same thing.
They definitely do.
And Westover draws a pretty sharp line between them here.
He does. And it's a distinction that genuinely matters for your paycheck. Automation is when technology performs a task, and potentially the human is removed entirely from that specific process.
Okay.
Think of a robotic arm welding a car door on a massive assembly line. The human welder who used to do that manually, they aren't in that loop anymore. They are gone from that task. The machine does 100% of the execution.
Right. The robot does the thing, the human goes away.
Yeah.
That is the classic replacement model we're all terrified of.
Exactly. But augmentation is fundamentally different. In an augmentation scenario, the technology enhances productivity within the task, but the human remains absolutely essential. The human is still firmly in the loop.
Okay.
And Westover argues heavily that the current reality of generative AI, large language models, all these wild tools we're seeing pop up, is actually a state of augmentation dominance.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second here.
Sure.
If I sit down and use ChatGPT to write a difficult email to a client, isn't that automating the writing process? The AI is picking the actual words. I'm just sitting there watching the cursor move.
It's automating the drafting, perhaps, but think about the wider process there.
Okay.
Large language models provide decision support. They do not provide decision-making. They produce drafts. They produce options. But a human has to review them and refine them.
Because it hallucinates.
Because it hallucinates, or because the tone is off. A human has to actively select the best option. The human becomes the editor, the curator, the overriding strategist. The AI is just the raw engine generating the material.
So we're moving from doing the work to judging the work.
That is the big pivot. And the source material specifically calls this the judgment requirement. This is a crucial concept.
Tell me more about that.
Well, Westover identifies 3 distinct types of significance that AI, as incredibly smart as it seems, cannot yet handle on its own. And understanding these 3 things is basically your career insurance policy against obsolescence.
Okay, I want that insurance policy. Let's break those down. What are the 3 things the AI simply can't do?
First up, there is causal significance.
Causal, like cause and effect.
Exactly. This is figuring out what actions actually produce desired outcomes out there in the messy real world. AI is incredibly great at correlation. It's a massive statistical machine.
Right.
It knows that word A usually follows word B. It knows that in its massive training data, roosters always crow when the sun rises.
But it doesn't know that the rooster isn't causing the sun to rise.
Bingo. It completely lacks a real-world model. It has zero concept of physical laws or social reality.
Can you give me a business example of that? Because, roosters are one thing, but how does that actually play out in an office environment?
Sure. Let's say you are a logistics manager for a shipping company. You ask an AI routing system to optimize a delivery route for your fleet.
Okay.
The AI looks at all the map data and says, hey, if you take this specific route through the city, you save 15% on fuel costs. Great. Right.
Sounds great on paper.
Right, on paper. But the AI missed a vital real-world detail. That specific route goes through an older tunnel with a low clearance, and your delivery trucks are too tall to fit.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The AI just sees the math. It says distance is shorter, fuel is saved, efficiency is achieved. It literally does not understand the causal reality of a 10-foot truck hitting an 8-foot concrete bridge and the truck stopping.
Right. Doesn't know what a bridge is.
Right. Exactly. You, the human manager, provide the causal significance. You look at that optimized plan and immediately say, that won't work in the physical world.
Okay, that makes total sense. It doesn't have common sense.
Mm.
So what's the second of significance?
The second is normative significance.
Normative. Meaning what exactly?
It's values, ethics, deciding which outcomes actually align with our stakeholders, our brand voice, our underlying morality. AI doesn't have values. It has math.
Right.
It doesn't inherently know if a generated response is deeply offensive or brand damaging unless it has been explicitly trained on that one specific pattern to avoid it. It cannot read the room.
So it can write a technically flawless press release, but it can't tell you if that press release is going to completely get your company canceled on social media.
Precisely. It doesn't comprehend that something technically true might also be absolute PR suicide.
Yeah.
That normative judgment deciding what we should do rather than just what we can do is entirely a human domain.
Okay. Causal and normative. What is the third one?
Creative significance.
Now wait, people are definitely going to argue with that one.
Oh, I know. People will immediately say, but AI generates incredible art. It writes poems. I saw that picture of the Pope in a giant white puffer jacket.
I mean, that was a really good picture. It fooled a lot of people.
It was very convincing. But Westover is talking about novel combinations that solve actual practical problems. AI searches a massive design space. It can look at 1 billion different options in seconds.
Right.
It can throw 1 million darts at the board blindly, but it doesn't actually know which of those options is completely absurd in reality versus which one is a genuine breakthrough. It takes a human expert to look at that massive output and say, that's the one.
It's the difference between just brainstorming endlessly and actually selecting the winning idea. The AI generates the massive haystack, and the human locates the needle.
Or the human even decides where the haystack should be built in the first place.
I love that. Okay, so philosophically, we are the judges,
Mm-hmm.
and the AI is the generator. That does sound somewhat comforting, but let's look at the actual scoreboard here.
Let's do it.
Westover cites some specific studies here that, well, jaw-dropping is an overused term, but these numbers are really significant. We aren't talking about a tiny 2% productivity boost here.
No, not at all. We are talking about massive structural leaps. In macroeconomics, we usually pop the champagne for a 1.5% productivity gain across a sector.
Yeah.
The studies cited in this text are showing individual gains of 30, 40, even 50%.
Let's start with the customer service study he mentions.
Yeah.
It's Brynjolfsson et al. From
Yeah.
2025, I believe.
Yes.
This one really stuck out to me because of who actually benefited the most.
Yes. This is a very pivotal study in this space right now. They looked at a cohort of about 5,000 customer support agents who were suddenly given an AI assistant based on a large language model.
Like a chatbot assisting the humans.
Exactly. The tool would suggest responses in real time. It would instantly link to relevant policy documents, that sort of thing. And overall, the issue resolution speed for the whole group went up by 14%.
Which is huge for a massive call center. That 14% translates to millions of dollars in saved time.
It absolutely does. But here is the massive twist in the data. Normally, when a company introduces a highly complex new software tool, your senior people, your seasoned experts, they benefit the most because they already have the deep context to use the tool effectively.
Right, and the rookies usually struggle to figure it out.
Exactly. But here, it was the exact opposite.
The rookies actually won.
They did. The bottom quintile, meaning the least experienced, lowest performing agents in the center, they saw personal productivity improvements of 34%.
34%. That's insane. What about the top performers?
The top performers saw almost zero change in their metrics.
That is incredibly counterintuitive. Why would the experts not get faster?
Because in this specific scenario, the AI acted as a great equalizer. Think about what actually makes a senior customer service agent senior.
They know all the rules.
Right. They have all that tacit knowledge memorized over years. They know exactly which obscure folder the policy PDF is hidden in. They know the exact de-escalation script for a furious customer by heart.
Okay, I see where this is going.
The AI basically took all that hard-earned tacit knowledge and handed it on a silver platter to the 22-year-old new hire on their very first day. It completely closed the skill gap.
So instead of the classic tech story where the rich get richer in terms of skills, this was a case where the beginners get better immediately.
In that specific routine context, yes, it drastically raised the floor of performance. But now, let's shift gears and look at high-end knowledge work.
Okay.
Management consultants. This brings us to the Del Aqua study from 2023. This one is really famous in the economics field right now because it introduces a concept they call the jagged frontier.
I really love this visualization. Please explain the jagged frontier for the listener.
Yeah. Imagine a circle drawn on a whiteboard. Inside that circle is absolutely everything an AI can do perfectly right now. Outside the circle is everything it cannot do. Simple enough, right?
Makes sense.
Except the border of that circle isn't a perfect, smooth, predictable line. It's highly jagged, it's wildly messy and unpredictable.
Meaning what?
Meaning, on one highly specific task, let's say, write a polite follow-up email to a vendor. The AI is an absolute genius. The frontier extends way out. But on a task that seems functionally very similar to a human-like, write a polite email explaining a highly complex ethical breach to a board of directors, the AI might just crash and burn spectacularly. The frontier retracts way inward.
And the main problem is, as a casual user sitting at my keyboard, I can't actually see where that line is.
You cannot see the line until you cross it. In the study, the consultants who used AI for tasks that fell squarely within the AI's capabilities became basically superhumans.
Felt superhuman.
They were 25% faster and produced work of 40% higher quality than their peers. They were virtually unstoppable.
Wow. But there's a but coming.
Oh, there is a big but. For tasks that were just slightly outside that jagged frontier tasks that seemed easy but actually required subtle factual checking or very nuanced causal reasoning, the consultants using the AI actually performed significantly worse than the consultants who didn't use it at all.
Wait, they did worse? How is that possible if they have this super smart assistant?
Because they trusted the AI way too much. They completely fell asleep at the wheel. They watched the AI absolute crush the first three tasks, so they just blindly assumed it would perfectly handle the fourth task.
Complacency.
Total complacency. This is the danger of the augmentation era. When the bicycle is electric, you stop paying close attention to the road. And with the jagged frontier, the road can literally disappear out from under you instantly.
So you really have to know exactly when to confidently use the bicycle and when to just get off and walk. And that knowing that high-level judgment is the actual new skill.
Precisely. That is the meta skill of the decade.
Let's hit a couple more quick stats just to really solidify this before we move on to the broader economics. What about software developers?
There is a great study by Peng et al. In 2023. Developers who were actively paired with an AI coding assistant were 56% faster at completing tasks.
56%. That effectively doubles the output of your entire engineering workforce without hiring a single new person.
In terms of raw output for specific modular tasks, yes. And again, mirroring the customer service study, the older and less experienced programmers actually gain the most from the tool. It helps tremendously with the rote grunt work, the basic syntax, writing the boilerplate code.
What about creative fields? Writing.
Noy and Zhang did a study in 2023 on professional writing tasks. They saw a 40% reduction in the time it took to complete the tasks, alongside an 18% objective improvement in the quality of the final writing.
Okay, so let's pause here. If I am a CEO listening to this deep dive right now, I am honestly salivating. I am seeing potential 50% gains across my departments.
Natural.
But if I am an employee listening to this, I am probably terrified. Because if I can suddenly do my job 50% faster, doesn't that logically mean my boss only needs half as many of me?
And that very understandable fear brings us squarely into segment 2, the economic mechanics. What you were describing there is known as the lump of labor fallacy.
Economists always call it a fallacy, but to a regular person, it just feels like simple math. If I have exactly 100 hours of work to get through this week, and suddenly a new tool means it only takes me 50 hours, I fire half the staff. Why is that math wrong?
It feels like basic math, but real-world economics is very rarely about simple subtraction. The lump of labor fallacy is the very old idea that there is a strict, fixed amount of work to be done in the world, a finite lump. And once that specific lump of work is done, there is simply nothing left for anyone to do.
Right.
But 200 years of industrial history tells us that is simply not how economies work.
Okay, give me a concrete example. Convince me that I'm not going to be redundant.
Think about the invention of ATMs.
The cash machines.
Yes. When the automated teller machine first rolled out massively in the 70s and 80s, everyone assumed human bank tellers were completely finished as a profession. The logic was exactly what you just said. The machine handles the cash withdrawals and deposits, so why on earth do we need a human standing there?
And yet, if I walk into a bank today, it's still full of people working.
Exactly. What actually happened was that the sheer cost of operating a single bank branch plummeted because you needed far fewer tellers per branch to handle the rote cash transactions.
Oh, I see.
So because it was cheaper, banks opened way more branches everywhere. And the actual daily jobs of the remaining tellers changed entirely. They stopped just mechanically counting $20 bills, which the machine did flawlessly, and they started doing relationship banking.
Like selling other services.
Right. They started selling auto loans, opening credit cards, discussing mortgages, things that required human connection and persuasion.
So the fundamental nature of the work shifted, and the volume of branches expanded.
This is a perfect example of complementarity economics. When AI massively reduces the cost or the time of a rote subtask, like drafting a standard email or writing a snippet of basic code, it doesn't just finalize the job and send everyone home. It very often heavily increases the value of the human's contribution to other, more complex parts of the job.
So if I'm a junior corporate lawyer, and an AI tool can suddenly review my massive stack of routine contracts in 10 minutes instead of 10 grueling hours, I don't just go home at noon.
No.
I spend those remaining 9 hours actually working on deep legal strategy for the client.
Exactly right. The baseline cost of contract review drops to near zero, so the client demand for high-level legal strategy might actually skyrocket because it's now cheaper to get the whole legal service started.
Okay, that paints a somewhat rosy picture. However, Westover definitely does not say this is going to be a guaranteed utopia for absolutely everyone, does it? There is a specific group of people who are in deep trouble here.
Yes. The mid-skilled worker. This is the absolute danger zone in the augmentation economy. Westover describes this phenomenon as a U-shaped impact or a hollowing out risk for the labor market.
Walk us through that U-shaped concept.
Think of all professional skills on a horizontal spectrum. On the left, you have low-skilled workers. In the middle, mid-skilled. On the right, high-skilled experts.
Okay.
We already saw from the call center data that low-skilled workers gain huge immediate benefits. The entry barriers to doing a decent job are completely lowered. A total novice can perform almost like a mid-level employee very quickly by leaning on the AI, so the bottom left of our U-shape goes way up in value and productivity.
And what about the high-skilled experts on the right side?
They essentially gain superpowers. They can dramatically scale their expert judgment. A senior software architect who used to only be able to oversee 2 complex projects simultaneously can now easily oversee 10 because the AI handles all the tedious downstream drafting and bug hunting, so the top right of the U goes way up.
But the middle?
The mid-skilled worker. This is where it gets tough. If your entire job was purely routine knowledge application, basically just reliably doing the rote thing that is now easily automated or heavily augmented, and you don't possess the high-level critical judgment to move up the chain, or the low-level flexibility to shift roles, you face immense competitive pressure.
Squeezed from both sides.
Exactly. You're squeezed from the bottom by much cheaper novice labor using AI to do your job, and you're squeezed from the top by senior experts scaling their reach downward into your territory.
So if your entire career identity is built on just outputting average work reliably, you are sitting right in the bullseye.
Essentially, yes. You absolutely must move up the value chain. You have to aggressively acquire those higher order judgment skills we talked about. And this directly leads to the macro wage inequality theories that Westover outlines. He basically sees 2 potential societal scenarios playing out.
Let's hear them. Give me scenario A.
Scenario A is the broadly good outcome. This happens if society generates a very high supply of AI-literate workers. If our educational systems adapt and everyone quickly learns how to use these tools effectively, overall productivity goes up across the entire board. And crucially, because these augmentation skills are widespread and common, wages generally rise broadly.
Because the rising tide lifts all boats.
Right. Inequality is somewhat mitigated in this scenario because the secret sauce, the ability to use AI, isn't a closely guarded secret. It's just a common utility, like knowing how to use Microsoft Word.
That sounds great. And scenario B?
Scenario B is concentration-driven inequality.
That sounds much less great.
It is. This happens if true AI skills remain rare, or, and this is the really critical part, if the complementary skills like strategic judgment and deep domain expertise are heavily concentrated in just a tiny handful of people.
The superstar.
Exactly. Imagine a large corporation where AI suddenly does 90% of all the initial drafting, coding, and analysis. But there is only one highly experienced senior person smart enough to actually review and approve it all. That single person becomes a massive systemic bottleneck.
And in economics, bottlenecks are incredibly valuable.
Beyond valuable. If you are the bottleneck, you can dictate your price. You can charge whatever you want. The entire economic value of the company's process gets stuck at the exact point where human judgment is still strictly required.
Yeah.
If you are the person providing that judgment, you become incredibly wealthy.
And everyone else?
Everyone else just becomes a highly interchangeable commodity.
Wow. So the fundamental goal of a healthy society, and frankly of any smart organization, should be to actively prevent scenario B. We want as many people as humanly possible to be the judge, not just a select elite few.
Precisely. Which naturally brings us right to the organizational playbook, because you cannot just sit back and wish for scenario A to happen magically. You have to actively build the infrastructure for it.
This is segment 3, and honestly, this is the part I think is the most immediately useful for any managers or team leaders listening right now. Westover thoroughly outlines 4 major pillars of how successful companies are actually winning with this transition right now. Not just giving people a ChatGPT login and hoping for the best, but fundamentally integrating it.
It is essentially a comprehensive blueprint for human capital investment in the 21st century.
Let's go through them. Let's start with pillar 1, widespread AI literacy. Now, when I hear the word literacy in a tech context, my mind immediately goes to learning how to code in Python or something. Is that what he means here?
No, not at all. And that is a very common and dangerous mistake companies make. The primary interface for these powerful new tools is just plain English or Spanish or French. It feels deceptively easy to use.
Right. Anyone can type a sentence.
But true literacy in this context means something much deeper. Yes, it means understanding basic prompt engineering, but far more importantly, it means deeply understanding capability boundaries.
Navigating the jagged frontier again.
Exactly. The source text cites a really fascinating case study of a major global management consulting firm. When they rolled out their AI tools, they didn't just give their thousands of staff access and say, hey, have fun, be more productive.
What did they do?
They extensively trained their staff specifically to recognize when the AI was highly likely to be wrong.
They intentionally trained them to be skeptic.
They absolutely trained them in the critical interrogation of the tool. The core mantra of the training was basically, do not blindly trust this output. You must independently verify the facts. You must rigorously check the underlying logic. And the real-world result was that these consultants ended up using the AI much more selectively.
Interesting.
They didn't try to use it to solve every single problem, but when they did deploy it on the right problem, it was devastatingly effective.
And there was another great example in there about a large financial services company that I thought was brilliantly executed. They avoided doing a lazy one-size-fits-all corporate training.
Right, that was super smart. They correctly realized that a frontline customer service agent inherently needs a completely different working relationship with an AI than a back office quantitative investment analyst needs.
Makes total sense.
So they created entirely separate training tracks. For the customer-facing staff, the intensive training was entirely focused on retrieval, how to query the AI to instantly find the exact right corporate policy while a stressed customer is yelling on the phone.
Okay.
But for the quantitative analysts, the training was entirely about pattern recognition, how to use the AI to spot hidden macro trends in absolutely massive data sets. And then for the upper managers, the training was completely different again. It focused on decision support, how to use the AI to map out complex strategic scenarios and properly weigh different business options.
Wow.
This is exactly what Westover really means when he talks about human capital investment. It is not just about writing a big check to buy new software licenses. It is about deliberately building the specialized human brain power required to actually wield that software effectively.
Okay, that brings us to pillar 2. Investing in higher order skills. We have firmly established that the AI is going to do the grunt work. So what practically is left for the human employees to do all day?
We need to move into the upper levels of cognitive taxonomies.
Fancy words. What does that mean on a Tuesday afternoon?
We are talking about deep analysis, critical evaluation, and true novel creation. The text uses a scientific example here that I think really clarifies this shift beautifully. It looks at the pharmaceutical research industry.
Oh, this part was super cool. Break this down for the listener.
Okay, so in modern drug discovery, AI can generate chemical molecules at an unbelievable rate. It can map out the entire chemical design space and say, hey, researchers, here are 10,000 theoretically possible molecular structures that might effectively target this specific cancer.
It's an incredible idea generator.
It's a perfect generator. But the AI literally does not know how human biology functions in the real world. It only knows the abstract statistical patterns of chemistry data. Human scientists desperately need to apply what we call scientific judgment to actively decide which of those 10,000 biological mechanisms are actually plausible enough and safe enough to spend $50 million moving into clinical trials.
So the AI is basically the tireless architect drawing up 1,000 rough sketches overnight, and the human is the master engineer looking at them and saying, well, that building will collapse in a breeze, that one is way too expensive to build, but that one right there, that one is absolutely perfect. Let's build that.
Exactly. And we're seeing this exact dynamic radically change human resources and tech companies, too. The text explicitly mentions a major tech firm that completely overhauled its engineering career ladders recently.
How so?
Promotion to senior levels is literally no longer fundamentally about writing great code.
Which is pretty wild to think about, considering that for the last 20 years, Learn to Code was touted as the ultimate golden ticket to the middle class.
Oh, the ability to code is still very useful as a baseline, absolutely. But the actual career promotion, the big money, now comes entirely from demonstrated skills in problem framing and high-level systems thinking. It's no longer about asking the employee, can you elegantly build this specific software bridge? It's about asking them, should we even be building a bridge here at all? Or do we actually need a tunnel? Or maybe just a ferry service? That high-level strategic framing is the true higher-order skill.
I really love that distinction. Moving away from constantly asking, how do I do this rote task, and moving toward asking, what is the right thing to do in the first place?
That is the defining shift of the decade.
Let's move to pillar 3, redesigning workflows.
Hmm.
Because this is the highly practical rubber meets the road stuff.
Mm.
You cannot just magically sprinkle AI on top of a broken old workflow and expect miracles, right?
No, absolutely not. That is a guaranteed recipe for corporate disaster. If you just recklessly add incredibly fast AI to a fundamentally bad, inefficient process, you literally just get terrible results much, much faster. The source material is remarkably clear on this point. The absolute biggest productivity gains always come from entirely re-architecting human-AI collaboration workflows from the ground up.
Give me an example of what that re-architecture actually looks like.
Let's take the high-end legal firm example again.
Okay.
The old way of doing corporate law. A team of highly stressed junior lawyers sits in a room and manually reads 5,000 dense discovery documents over 3 weeks. Their eyes bleed. They absolutely hate their lives. It is pure, expensive drudgery.
Then there.
Right. Now, the completely new way. An AI system instantly ingests all 5,000 documents and accurately flags every standard clause and highlights all the potential liabilities in about 45 seconds.
Incredible.
But here is where the vital workflow redesign actually happens. Those junior attorneys do not just spend their day passively double-checking the AI's work. The firm fundamentally shifts their daily focus entirely toward complex negotiation strategy and deep risk evaluation for the client.
So their actual job description changes. They aren't document reviewers anymore. They're strategic advisors from day one.
It fundamentally changes the nature of the profession. And the text importantly notes that this structural shift actually led to massively higher job satisfaction among the junior staff.
Well, sure, because literally nobody actually enjoys reading boilerplate standard clauses for 10 hours a day.
Mhm.
People went to law school because they like being lawyers. They want to argue, strategize, and win tough cases.
Yeah.
The AI just happily took the boring part of the job away.
Exactly. And there was also a really fascinating customer service redesign mentioned in the text that follows this exact same logic.
Oh, right, the detective versus connection work.
Yes. In this newly redesigned call center, the AI entirely handles what they call the detective work. It instantly finds the missing tracking number. It immediately cross-references the strict corporate return policy. It instantly pulls up the customer's entire 5-year purchasing history.
All the stuff that normally takes an agent putting you on hold for 5 minutes to go search for.
Right. Meanwhile, the human agent handles 100% of the connection work. They focus entirely on proactively calming down the furious customer, actively building long-term brand relationship, and creatively solving the unique emotional nuance of the problem.
I love that.
This beautifully exploits the fundamental comparative advantage of both entities. The AI has absolutely infinite, perfect memory and instant recall. The human has genuine empathy and contextual understanding.
AI has infinite memory. Humans have empathy. We need to print that on a t-shirt.
It's very true.
Okay, moving to pillar 4, managing transitions. Because, let's be real here, if you are a massive legacy corporation, you can't just suddenly fire your entire existing workforce and try to hire 10,000 brand new, perfectly AI-literate cyborg employees tomorrow.
Well, technically you could try, but it's astronomically expensive. It completely destroys any remaining company morale. And crucially, you instantly lose decades of irreplaceable institutional knowledge about your own business. Westover strongly argues instead for building deliberate training bridges. Yes. The telecommunications company example he uses here was incredibly strong. This massive telecom had thousands of veteran network technicians out in the field whose primary daily job was just routine physical troubleshooting. A red light starts blinking on a server rack somewhere, you drive out there and manually flip a specific switch to reset it.
Okay, but then AI started being able to diagnose and reroute those network errors automatically from the cloud.
Exactly. The rote task vanished.
So in the old economy, those thousands of guys just get laid off immediately.
Usually, yes. That's a tragic story we are used to hearing. But in this case, instead of mass layoffs, the company invested heavily to systematically retrain those exact same technicians to become what they called complex solution designers.
Okay, honestly, that just sounds like a very fancy HR title change designed to hide a painful demotion. Was it actually a real job?
It was a very real, very high-value job. Because think about it. These veteran technicians already knew the actual physical reality of the company's network intimately. They knew the physical reality of how the underground cables degraded, how the junction boxes handled weather, all of it.
Right.
The central AI could easily handle the simple software glitches remotely, but when a massive enterprise client suddenly needed a highly custom, robust physical network setup designed from scratch, These newly minted designers used the AI to rapidly model the software architecture, and they used their own hard-won physical intuition and judgment to actually build the viable hardware solution. They successfully moved up the corporate value chain.
That's a great outcome. And there was also the creation of the insight specialist role mentioned, right?
Right, a major financial institution realized they needed a bridge, so they proactively created entirely new job categories. They took veteran people with deep, intuitive industry knowledge and aggressively trained them on advanced AI analysis tools to rapidly generate market insights. They officially titled them insight specialists.
So it's a true hybrid role.
Exactly. Half rigorous data scientist, half intuitive business expert.
Okay, this brings us perfectly into the part of the show I know the listeners are eagerly waiting for. Segment 4, the individual's guide.
Let's get personal.
If I am sitting in traffic, listening to this deep dive right now, and I decide I really want to be one of these highly paid insight specialists or complex solution designer, what do I actually do tomorrow morning? What specific new things do I need to put on my resume?
Westover strongly suggests building what he calls a multi-dimensional portfolio. You desperately need to stop thinking of your career skills as just a single narrow track and start managing them like a diversified portfolio of assets.
Okay, I like that framework. What is asset number 1?
Asset one is foundational AI literacy. You absolutely have to be able to jump in and drive the car. You need solid prompt engineering skills and a deep practical understanding of how these various tools actually ingest and process data.
So that's just the new baseline. Table stakes?
Complete table stakes now. If you don't have it, you aren't even in the game.
Okay, check. What is asset number 2?
Asset two is deep domain expertise. And please hear this clearly. Do not throw away your expensive law degree or your 10 years of hard-fought marketing experience or your master-level knowledge of commercial plumbing.
Right, because the fear is that the AI knows everything now, so human expertise is dead.
That is the single biggest misconception out there right now, that domain expertise is somehow dead. It is the exact opposite. You absolutely still need your deep field knowledge to actually judge the AI's output effectively. Remember our core theme. You are now the senior editor, and you simply cannot edit a complex text in a language you don't actually speak.
That is such a spectacularly good point. If I personally do not know what highly secure, elegant Python code looks like, I cannot safely use an AI coding assistant to build an app. I'm literally just guessing and hoping it works.
Exactly. If you don't have the domain expertise, you will just confidently introduce catastrophic bugs into the system much faster than ever before. You need the deep domain expertise to accurately define where the bullseye is.
Okay, so asset 3.
Asset three is bridging capabilities. This is the rare ability to actively translate between the raw technical capability of the AI and the messy human business problem at hand.
What does that look like in practice?
Can you look at a struggling marketing department's chaotic workflow and smartly say, hey, a tuned large language model could flawlessly solve this one very specific data sorting part of our process, but we absolutely still need an experienced human to handle this other delicate client-facing part?
Translation layer.
Exactly. That translation layer, knowing what the tool can do and mapping it safely to what the business actually needs, is exactly where the big money is right now.
And finally, what's the last asset?
Asset four is adaptive capacity. This is the ultimate meta skill.
Meaning what?
It means aggressively learning how to learn, because the specific tool you spend 6 months mastering today, whether it's ChatGPT 4 or Claude or whatever, will be completely obsolete in 18 months. The true skill you are selling to an employer isn't your mastery of the current tool. The skill is your proven ability to pick up the completely new, unfamiliar tool next year instantly, without panicking.
It's essentially the psychological ability to not completely freak out when the interface changes overnight.
Pretty much. Resilience. And there is a really deep psychological aspect to all this that Westover touches on too. He talks about the vital importance of maintaining agency.
Agency, feeling like you're in control.
Right. Human work needs to remain psychologically meaningful. If you sit back and just let the AI become your de facto boss, if you let the screen just dictate to you what task to do next all day, you will become deeply, profoundly miserable.
Yeah, that sounds dystopian.
It is. You have to aggressively frame the AI in your own mind as your subordinate tool. You are the one driving the project and solving the complex problem. The AI is just the junior assistant quickly fetching the coffee and doing the tedious math in the background.
I am the visionary architect. You are the incredibly fast intern.
A very fast, very smart intern, but yes, exactly. You absolutely must retain the psychological stance of the master craftsman directing the tools, not a cog being directed by the machine.
Let's zoom out for a second to the macro level.
Yeah.
Segment 5, policy in the future.
Okay.
Because if we are realistically saying that we all urgently need to become these high judgment, critical thinking super editors, I look closely at our current public school system and I genuinely worry. Our schools look absolutely nothing like what you're describing.
That is the single biggest macro takeaway from Westover's entire analysis. He calls it the education imperative.
Walk us through it.
If high-level human capital, our critical brains, is the new economic bottleneck, then our schools are the fundamental factories producing that capital. And right now, unfortunately, the factory is still perfectly designed for the late 19th century.
We prioritize rote memorization.
Heavily, we sit kids down and test them. What exact year did this specific war start? What is the capital city of this country? Recite this formula.
And AI absolutely dominates rote memorization. It completely wins that specific game every single time.
Every time, effortlessly.
So why on earth are we still aggressively testing kids on it?
Institutional habit. Bureaucratic momentum. It's easy to grade a multiple choice test. But Westover argues we need to move incredibly aggressively toward teaching pure critical thinking and judgment. We should be actively teaching young kids how to deeply evaluate conflicting sources, how to construct a logical argument from scratch, how to quickly spot a statistical fallacy, how to ask the exact right question of an AI system.
He actually suggests that creating widespread AI fluency programs in public schools is just as important today as basic reading and writing literacy programs were a century ago.
He does. And the historical parallel is spot on.
That makes total sense to me. Because if you couldn't read a book in 1920, you were fundamentally locked out of the industrial economy, period. And if you genuinely can't use an AI effectively in 2030...
And might be permanently locked out of the knowledge economy. The barrier to entry is shifting that radically.
That is sobering.
It is. And intimately tied to that policy challenge is the governance and trust factor. We briefly touched on this earlier with the jagged frontier, but it's vital for broad adoption.
Trust in the tools themselves.
Exactly. Transparency and core fairness. If everyday workers genuinely believe the new AI tool is secretly spying on them, if they think it's silently counting their daily keystrokes, or aggressively monitoring their bathroom breaks, or if they strongly suspect the AI algorithm is somehow biased against them, mass adoption inside that company will instantly fail.
We have literally already seen this happen. Large companies proudly roll out an expensive new monitoring tool. Absolutely everyone in the office hates it immediately, and the employees spend all day brilliantly finding clever ways to sabotage or work around it.
Exactly. The concept of the human in the loop isn't just about maximizing economic productivity. It is fundamentally necessary for moral and legal accountability. If an AI system automatically denies a family a mortgage loan or summarily rejects a qualified candidate's resume, a human being absolutely needs to be able to step in and clearly explain exactly why that happened. We simply cannot legally or morally outsource our societal ethics to a proprietary black box.
We cannot outsource our ethics to a black box. That is an incredibly powerful line to draw.
It's the absolute line we have to hold as a society.
Okay, we are coming right up on time here. Let's bring this deep dive home. We have covered a massive amount of ground today.
We really have.
We went through augmentation versus replacement, the invisible dangers of the jagged frontier, the U-shaped economics, the corporate playbooks. Can you summarize the absolute core insights for us? What should the listener vividly walk away with today?
I would boil this massive paper down to 4 critical things to remember.
Okay, hit me.
Number 1, AI, in its current and near future form, is an augment, not a total replacement. It is a wildly powerful bicycle, not a replacement rider, but you personally have to keep pedaling.
Keep pedaling. Got it. Number 2.
Number 2, the jagged frontier is very real, which means you desperately need sharp human judgment to constantly check the AI's output. The core economic value of a human worker has permanently shifted from merely generating content to rigorously evaluating content.
Generating to evaluating. Perfect. Number 3.
Number 3, the new macroeconomic reality heavily favors the low-skilled beginner if they have tool access and the high-skilled expert if they intelligently use the tool to scale their reach. The middle ground is exactly where the extreme risk is. Do whatever it takes to not be stuck offering average work in the middle.
Get out of the middle. And number 4.
Number 4, the real, incredibly hard work ahead, both for massive companies and for you as an individual professional, is in thoughtfully redesigning your workflows. Don't just blindly use AI to do your same old inefficient job slightly faster. Use it to invent a fundamentally different, much better way to work.
That is a truly fantastic summary of a very dense topic. Thank you for that.
Happy to do it.
And I want to leave the listener with a final, slightly provocative thought. Something I have been obsessively mulling over ever since I finished reading Westover's final conclusion on the true nature of human capital.
Let's hear it.
We touched on this briefly, but let's really look closely at the implications. If AI permanently lowers the barrier to entry for basically all technical skills, if literally anyone on Earth can instantly write a grammatically flawless corporate email, if anyone can instantly write decent boilerplate Python code, if anyone can instantly generate a perfectly acceptable graphic design, then the societal definition of the word talent completely and utterly shifts.
It has to. The baseline moves.
Right. In a world where literally everyone can produce average-level, competent work instantly with a prompt, the massive economic premium no longer goes to the standard doer. The massive premium goes entirely to the editor.
It's the paradox of abundance. As the physical act of doing the work becomes incredibly cheap, the cognitive act of deciding what to do becomes incredibly expensive.
Exactly. It goes to the rare person with taste, the person with sharp judgment, the person with the deep ethics and vision to boldly know exactly what is actually worth doing in the first place, amidst a sea of infinite generated noise.
Beautifully said.
So my ultimate question to you listening to this right now in your car or at your desk is simply this. Are you currently spending your time cultivating your skills merely as a doer, basically just learning how to dig the exact same ditch a little bit faster? Or are you actively cultivating your rare skills as a judge, learning exactly where the ditch should actually go, and deeply understanding why we are digging it in the first place?
Because the robots, as we've seen, are genuinely fantastic diggers.
They really are, but they're absolutely terrible architects.
I couldn't have possibly said it better myself. That is the fundamental choice we all face now.
Well, that gives us all something crucial to think about today. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure.